They had burned my home. I stood outside what once was my doorway, in burnt clothes and ash-covered face, holding a bucket of water that sloshed as I swayed. I stared out at the field of fire, the burning trees and the collapsed houses, and I stood there, amazed at the destruction. These were not the doings of mortals. This destruction was not by the hand of man at all, but rather because of it. Tired of their folly, Gaia had opened herself up and released the ancestors, who came riding terrible beasts, wielding terrible weapons, fire in their eyes and the howl of winter wind, their war cry. Man could not fight them. They found that though terribly large and appearing solid, their attacks passed through them like a hand through water. The intelligible ancestors had returned from their long slumber. They had passed on through this village somewhere after midnight of a new moon and have destroyed it completely, have since left to wreak havoc in other places. I stood, watching hungering fire lick decaying wood. The flames of this reflected in my glassy eyes. I saw the grass wilt and burn and turn to ash until nothing was left to burn. I saw the leafless trees standing smoking like so many pipes sticking out of the ground, and I hurt, not for man, but for the earth. I had but a bucket of water that sloshed as I swayed, and occasionally would spill over, cooling my heat-ravaged leg. I felt Gaia twist beneath me, closing her eyes. This is destruction by her will alone, necessary but never pleasant. Her tears fill the small stream behind my collapsing shack, from whence this bucket of water came, and likely soon more buckets shall be filled. I stood alone, looking for as far as the eye could see. Standing there in burnt clothes, the stench of burnt disorder violating my flared nostrils, filling my lungs with its black filth. I looked out at a world ravaged by the ancestors. But Gaia knew. Gaia knew that below this ash lay the seed of the new world. Gaia knew that through fire could consume screaming man and fleeing beast, ageless buildings and timeless plants, that the fire could only burn to the ground, not below. The skin of earth snuffed out fire and incubated the living seed beneath its flesh, protected its children. I stood alone, knowing this, knowing my task was to put out the fire, its devastation done. My task was to use the same water that quenches the fire to nourish the seed. I stood alone, but from the corner of my eye, through smoke and free-flying ashes, through the fires that still raged, I caught a glimpse of a girl, standing in clothes that still taste flame, in black, burnt and torn clothes still smoking, her wild hair flying around her head. But her skin, though stained and dirty, was untouched by the fire, and her eyes beheld the same fire I beheld, as she too stood in front of her own burned and collapsing home, the sparks of fire still jutting upward from its wooden carcass. And in her hand too she held a bucket that sloshed too as she swayed. And in that moment, she turned and looked at me, through me, into me. Her eyes caught mine, and a slow smile spread over her face.